This week on Newsnight, local governments and agencies pledge additional funds to pay for a study into the potential Sunshine Corridor. And some Canadians voice concerns over travelling to Florida amid diplomatic strains between Canada and the US. Newsnight starts now. Hello, I'm Steve Maud. Welcome to Newsnight, where we take an in-depth look at the top stories and issues in Central Florida and how they shape our community. First tonight, the relationship between Canada and the United States and its impact on Florida. Visits from Canada to the US are declining after rising steadily since the pandemic. Statistics Canada reports road trips to the US in February, many across land ports of entry like these, were down by more than a fifth from the same time a year ago. Visit Florida says Canadians make up the largest segment of international visitors to Florida, and the trade relationship between Canada and our state is worth billions. But the Trump administration's position on tariffs, immigration enforcement, and Canada's sovereignty appear to be having a significant political impact north of the border and, according to polling, on some Canadians' willingness to head south. At the same time, a US policy shift requiring Canadians over the age of 14 visiting for longer than 30 days to register with immigration authorities is also causing a stir, as Newsnight's Crystal Knowles found out when she caught up with a group of Canadian snowbirds at a retirement community in Brevard County.
My sister was going to...
For over a decade, Canadian snowbird Carol Free, along with several family members,
Hello! Come on in!
have flocked to Florida, escaping the northern chill for 3 sun-soaked months at a time. After crossing the border, Canadian citizens can stay in the U.S. for up to 6 months without a visa. But they now have to face rules that are changing the way some view travel to the United States. When you cross the border, what is the process like?
When you cross the border, you hand your passport, and it's pretty easy going, except this year. The questions were just different this year.
Free says the experience felt more like an interrogation. President Trump recently signed an executive order enforcing an existing law that requires most aliens over the age of 14 to register when visiting for longer than 30 days. It's a long-standing rule, but has not been applied consistently to Canadians.
It was fun.
Free's brother-in-law and neighbor in the Brevard County retirement community, Robin Murray, believes a growing number of Canadians who stay for the winter will be unwilling to register. He says he plans to take his money elsewhere.
If we have to do this 30-day thing, I will go next year. We'll first leave here soon if we have to register. And when next year, I'll come down, I'll do it for 30 days, sell my place, and that's it. Sayonara, I will not be back.
I think we're planning on coming next year too, but we're thinking about selling, you know.
According to the Department of Homeland Security, the registration requirement takes effect on April 11th. Failure to do so could result in a $5,000 fine or 6 months behind bars, even both. Do you think this is going to deter a lot of Canadian visitors from coming down?
Oh yeah, yeah. And they spend millions, like even going to out west. I know a lot we have friends that went to Texas, so they're all over.
Thousands of Canadians, including Carol Free and Robert Murray, are ready to trade the U.S. for other destinations next winter. Last year alone, more than 3 million Canadians visited Florida, about 27% of all international travelers, pumping billions into the local economy. Governor DeSantis recently touted the state's record-breaking tourism numbers.
I can say that for 2024, Florida broke yet another record for tourism. We're really excited that our tourism industry is humming.
Meanwhile, Carol Free hopes tensions between President Trump and the Canadian government ease.
It's not between the Canadian people and the American people, it's between the Prime Minister and the President, eh?
I see things slowly going downhill every day. The rhetoric going back and forth. The thing about the 51st state, that's an insult. I mean, we are a sovereign nation and intend to be. I'm very sad about that. I feel bad because I love this place. I love the people that are in it.
Crystal Knowles reporting there. Well, let's bring in our panel now to break it all down. And joining us in the studio this week, Catherine Silver from WKMG News 6. Good to see you, Catherine. It's been a while since we saw you on the program, so
it's good to be back.
Nice to have you here today. For the first time, James Wilkins from the Orlando Sentinel, covers business for the Sentinel. Good to see you, James.
Yes, good to see you as well.
Thanks for coming in today. Appreciate it. And Alexa Lorenzo, WFTV Channel 9 morning anchor. Good to see you, Alexa.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for coming in as usual. Alexa, let me start with you, and we'll start with some of the numbers, shall we? And I wonder how intertwined the Florida and Canadian economies really are, both in terms of visitors but also trade.
I think when this started making headlines, everyone knew there was some sort of intertwining with Florida and with Canada, but to what degree, I think really surprised people. No other nation buys more of Florida's produce or agriculture-related products than Canada. They get 40% of their seafood from here. So those are already really big numbers when it comes to imports and exports. As for what we get from them, that includes oil, auto parts, and some different forestry products. So this is to imports and exports. That's the basics of it.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about business and real estate, they contribute pretty significantly in that department as well. There are more than 600 Canadian companies located here in Florida. They contribute to a lot of the real estate buys. And again, we are talking about some of the numbers declining now, given the conversation that's happening.
Sure.
But back in 2024, there were more than 3 million Canadian visitors to the state of Florida alone. So not the country, we're talking Florida. They like coming here, and we're seeing that change.
Yeah, 3.3 million, and certainly tariffs could have an effect on a lot of the things you're talking about. We saw a sampling of opinion just now there in Crystal's piece, Catherine. You guys have been covering this as well. I mean, I wonder what impact we're seeing sort of so far in terms of the tangible response from Canadians who frequently travel to the US.
Well, some reports do show that the numbers are much lower, even as low as they were during the pandemic. So we're talking about, when there was a worldwide pandemic, that's the amount of people that were not traveling then. We're looking at numbers now, and they look quite similar. And we know here in Florida, this is one of the top states where Canadians do come, not only because we are a destination, but because of the weather we have. So we have those snowbirds that come down here, and if they're not spending time here anymore, they're not spending money here anymore, they're not purchasing property here anymore. And right now, Canadians are being told by their leadership to stay there and spend money at home.
It's worth noting, though, as we talk about this, that overall, the tourism numbers, as we heard the governor say there in Crystal's piece, are still pretty strong.
Yeah, Crystal did a great job highlighting that in her package. In 2024, we broke a record here for tourism back in Florida. So when you compare it to the pandemic, to years past, we continue to see that gain. Last year, it was 142.9 million visitors to the state of Florida. That's about 2.5 million more than the year before. But of course, the vast majority, more than 91% of that, is domestic travel.
Yeah.
So yes, Canadians, overseas travelers, that plays a major role, but the creme of the
international
creme,
segment's relatively small.
Correct, is that domestic travel.
The Sentinel's covered the response of Florida political and tourism industry leaders, right, to these Canadian concerns. What have you guys heard?
Mainly what we're hearing is that, Canadians are not necessarily happy with the way that things are going in the relationship between the United States and Canada. I mean, we're seeing, just at Canadian hockey games, we have, Canadians booing the United States national anthem. We have Canadian stores pulling American alcohol off of shelves. And so there definitely is a lot of general consternation between Canadians and the United States. But while we're hearing, general things from the Canadian public, political leaders like Governor Ron DeSantis don't necessarily seem to be as concerned. We have some reporting with the Sentinel where he's basically has said that he's not super worried and that he still sees, a lot of Canadian license plates as he travels around the state. So a little bit of, like I said, consternation, but overall we'll see how it turns out in the future.
And it'll be interesting to see what tourism industry leaders have to say as well as we go forward. I mean, beyond the politics, Catherine, you've covered the economic impacts of tariffs as well on Florida businesses locally here in our community. What have you found?
Well, we have spoken to a few small business owners that are right here in Central Florida. One that stood out in particular was an auto body shop owner who I spoke to, which of course, mostly everything they sell has some sort of aluminum or metal in it. They're putting parts in cars, whether it's electronics or lights or anything else. So they have a lot of uncertainty about what the trickle-down effect will be here at home. They've heard from manufacturers it could be maybe 10% even though that might sound small, to a small business, that's a big impact. And some of that will have to be passed on to the customer, unfortunately, which means prices will likely go up.
Europe's also an important segment, right, for the hospitality industry. Do we know how Europeans are responding, particularly to those sort of stories about people being detained at airports and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know if Europeans are necessarily too happy about the current state of affairs when it comes to the United States. Just, over the last couple months since President Trump has taken office, there's been, tightening of vetting for visa restrictions and things like that. We have stories of, Germans, people from, Slovenia and other countries being detained for weeks at border crossings with, visas and things of that nature. So I don't know if they're necessarily too happy about the way that I guess President Trump's comments have upended the longstanding relationship between Western Europe and the United States.
Well, it might take a while, of course, for us to see numbers reflected in our economic data here in Florida, but we'll certainly keep an eye on where that goes. You can find links to the new rule on alien registration that Crystal referred to, plus data from US Customs and Border Protection and Statistics Canada to explore for yourself. It's all at wcf.org/Newsnight. Okay, next tonight, growth and transportation, two key issues we follow closely here on this program. Let's start with rail and steps towards funding a study for a potential Sunshine Corridor rail expansion.
The Sunshine Corridor holds the potential to connect Sunrail services to the airport and the region's attractions area. But a state study of the potential development and its environmental impacts needs to be done first, and local and state governments and agencies need to pay an estimated $6 million for it. This week, Orange County agreed to kick in $500,000 for the study, joining Osceola County, which took the same step earlier this month. Last year, Osceola commissioners were pressed by the state on funding.
This is a very expensive project when you add up all of the costs, to get all the way to Disney Springs. But you're also going to have a dramatic result in the ridership of Sunrail.
But some commissioners seemed skeptical the rail project would do much to alleviate the strain on existing infrastructure.
If we're going to spend, if the ask is $4 million, I'd like to see how many, what percentage of that is going to alleviate Osceola County traffic.
Osceola and Orange counties now join Seminole County and the city of Orlando, which are also contributing $500,000 each to the initial PD&E study, which officials hope to begin this year. Volusia County could make a decision on that soon. Universal's paying $2 million and has set aside land for a station as it prepares to open its Epic Universe theme park. The State Department of Transportation is also contributing $2 million.
To note, the Central Florida Commuter Rail Commission, which is made up of the city of Orlando and Seminole, Orange, Osceola and Volusia counties, is meeting Thursday afternoon. We record this show on Thursday morning, so the story may change by airtime. The funding and operations of Sunrail, of course, are currently transitioning from state to local control. And James, let me start with you. And the Sentinel, of course, has extensively covered this story. We heard from the FDOT District Secretary just there, John Tyler, say that ridership is predicted to rise dramatically if there's a connection, I guess, from the airport to Disney Springs. What is the estimated ridership boost if the Sunshine Corridor comes to fruition?
Yeah, I think the Department of Transportation estimates about 6.4 million riders in this first year once the Sunshine Corridor is completed.
In 1 year?
Yeah, which is a large increase from the few thousand riders that Sunrail has monthly now. Ridership has never really recovered since the pandemic, and so the Sunshine Corridor will hopefully, for the Department of Transportation, do a lot to close that gap.
And of course, it wasn't particularly high even before the pandemic. News 6 has also been across this rail story for a long time, Catherine. As we heard, Orange and Osceola counties are the most recent ones to contribute to this expansion study. Osceola commissioners, as we heard there in that piece, were skeptical about providing funding just last year. What have been the main concerns from local agencies about contributing to this?
Well, concerns we've heard from Osceola are really two main things. And one is just what's next after we fund this initial study. It's one thing to give that amount of money now, but then what else are we expected to commit down the line potentially to get this across the finish line? And then the other thing is really the traffic. When we talk about Osceola and how much that area is booming, and we've all sat in that traffic or have heard about it, many times. And so, commissioners are wondering if we we put millions of dollars or thousands of dollars towards this, how big of a dent is that really going to make? Are people going to take Sunrail, or are they still going to choose to get in the car and be on the road, and it won't even really alleviate the problem that they're hoping it will?
Universal's committed money as well, Alexa, to this study. And on Friday, as we were just talking off camera, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board, formerly Reedy Creek, could consider helping with funding. Again, we record this on Thursday morning, so that might change. But what does this sort of indicate about this project's importance to the tourism industry, do you think?
So if you're following the math here,
Yeah.
2 million FDOT, 2 million Universal, that's 4 million. And now you have 500,000 from, as we've said, Seminole, Osceola, Orange, and Orlando.
Yeah.
We've reached that 6 million mark for what's needed for this project. We're still waiting on Volusia, and then we could have the Oversight District coming through. So we could see this study start here soon if we get the go-ahead and all those financial commitments hold. But Universal is all in. $2 million into this study shows what they believe this will do to the area. They have set aside and reserved real estate and property for a station, set aside real estate for tracks. So they really do believe. And of course, we can't ignore the fact that Epic Universe is going to be a major driver for them, right?
In a moment, yeah.
People could get to the airport, get on Sunrail, and head straight to that area and visit them at Epic Universe and their other theme parks. I mean, again, you said it already, but they're pretty much all in.
And of course, Brightline would be part of that Sunshine Corridor plan, so people could travel from further afield to the attractions area. It's certainly a big deal for the tourism industry. Is that what you guys are hearing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, money talks. That's the bottom line, right? So if Universal is willing to put $2 million in, that shows you just how much they believe they're going to get a reward for that further down the line. And they're targeting the same people who they hope will take the Sunrail, which would be those tourists that are going to go to our parks and also the convention center in Orange County.
It's going to be interesting to see what kind of boost it gives the local economy here. Let's discuss some other growth and transportation issues before we move on. And James, I wanted to talk a little bit about the airport. The Sunshine Corridor, of course, will connect the airport to points west. The airport itself got some important news about its future leadership. The Sentinel's been covering that. What do we know?
Yeah, there's a new leader at the helm when it comes to the Orlando International Airport. The Greater Orlando Aviation Authority just voted last week, and they approved Lance Little. He's the managing director of aviation for the Seattle-Tacoma Airport. And
That's a big airport.
Yeah, it's a huge airport. He's going to be the new CEO of the Orlando International Airport, which I think is the 7th busiest airport in the United States. So he's got a lot on his plate, but he's replacing Kevin Tebow, who announced in December he's stepping down to take care of his wife, who is ill. But yeah, he was unanimously approved last week, and I think he's going to be starting here shortly.
Well, you say a lot on his plate, and the airport, of course, as we've talked about on this program, has extensive expansion plans, so there certainly will be a lot to deal with. Staying with rail for a minute, Alexa, you've been looking at that safety issue at railroad crossings, where we're continuing to see these accidents. I mean, Brightline has been particularly affected by this issue. What measures are being proposed to improve safety from your reporting?
These crashes are nothing new. We've had rail in Florida for hundreds of years, but with Brightline running trains more frequently, people are impatient and cross the tracks. The Florida Department of Transportation says 88% of crossing incidents are caused by driver behavior, and that's across the board, whether we're talking Amtrak tracks, CSX, Brightline, across the board. So approaching 90% there, that's a big number. Last year, around late summer, the Florida Department of Transportation started the Florida Rail Safety Coalition, and it's bringing everyone to the table, public, private, government leaders, to talk about safety, to look at the technology that's out there. Are we going to see success if we put cameras, kind of like red light cameras, at crossings? Will we see success with quad gates where you physically cannot, in a vehicle, get around? They're looking at everything. They meet quarterly here in Orlando, and hopefully we see some progress from that.
On the roads, I wanted to get an update from you on some work that you've been reporting on along I-4, and not just because I was recently stuck in a massive traffic jam at Champions Gate. I will say there are plans for accelerating work, right, on that really busy stretch of I-4, I think from World Drive to 27. Any of us that have used that know how busy that is. What have you learned about the timetable there?
They are committed to getting it done by year's end. I asked that question maybe 3 different ways in a recent interview I just did with FDOT leaders, and they're committed to getting this done by the end of the year. It's a massive lift. Essentially, They are the current shoulder that's there, they're making it a lane and then adding another shoulder. So they're essentially adding an additional lane in both directions there on that 7.5 mile stretch. It's busy any time of day. So that is going to alleviate traffic immensely. Daily, that area in particular sees 140,000 drivers.
It's an amazing amount. Catherine, a lot of this traffic, right, that we keep talking about is down to the fact that this region is growing very fast. As a result of that, Orange County voters, of course, at the last election passed a rural boundary similar to the one we've seen in Seminole County. Legislators have got their eye on that, right, currently in Tallahassee. You've been reporting on that. What are the moves on the state level that might affect that rural boundary?
Well, there is a lot of concern in both Orange and Seminole County about the current version of SB 1118 that's making its way through the legislature right now, particularly because there's language in that bill that would roll back voter referendums dating back to 2011. So that would boil down to Orange County's rural boundary essentially being erased and Seminole County's becoming irrelevant. So people are wondering what will happen if decisions about development are now made in Tallahassee rather than here locally, because we know if there is a bunch of new development that's unchecked, we don't have any sort of smart growth initiatives in place. We all see the impact of that, not only traffic, but utilities, stormwater. I mean, it's everything that we see in our daily lives.
Yeah, there's been a lot of preemption efforts in Tallahassee, and certainly those growth and transportation issues are so intertwined here in our community for sure. A reminder, you can find us on social media. We're at WCF TV on Facebook and Instagram. We're also at Newsnight WCF on X. Finally, we mentioned Universal's Epic Universe in our previous segment on the Sunshine Corridor. Well, that park is set to open on May 22nd, the first new major theme park in Central Florida in nearly a quarter century.
Universal recently released pictures from inside the 5 worlds that will make up Epic Universe. They include Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk, Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, and Dark Universe. It's a major development for Central Florida's tourism industry, but it's been controversial over the years since its announcement in 2019, including Orange County's allocation of $125 million of public money to help pay for an extension of Kirkman Road to Epic Universe. But local officials expect the economic impact to be significant, including a major boost in tourism development tax revenues.
Really interesting to see those pictures of what's forthcoming for visitors to Epic Universe. James, let me start with you on this one. Your outlet's been covering the potential economic impact of Epic Universe. What are you guys hearing?
Yeah, I think most of what we've dug into is the impact to hotels. I know that hotel occupancy rates is something that we've looked at the Sentinel, and that we've seen that, at least for last year, that hotel occupancy rates were actually down. But a lot of that has to do with the increased capacity of hotels. There's been a lot of hotels constructed.
There's several hotels there, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, to kind of in anticipation of Epic Universe. And so while we're seeing, basically static numbers of tourists visiting, we're seeing more hotel rooms. So that occupancy rate has gone down. But as Epic Universe opens here in the next couple months, I think a lot of people are expecting to see those occupancy rates go up and drive the tourism and hospitality industry.
So occupancy has gone down because there are more hotel rooms, and currently they're empty, but the plans are that they won't be. What have you guys been hearing about potential economic impacts, Catherine?
Well, I mean, we can't understate how big of a deal this is for our area. I mean, the last time that we had a completely new theme park that was built was Animal Kingdom. It's been a considerable amount of time since we've seen a fully new park, and the Orange County Comptroller tracked tourist tax dollars when Animal Kingdom opened, and they saw an 8% increase. When the Wizarding World of Harry Potter opened, they also saw a significant increase. So if history repeats itself, we should see a huge boost with Epic. And of course, it's really not even history repeating itself, because this is a fully new concept that we've never seen before.
And of course, with that additional hotel capacity, that is, it's hoped, local leaders hope, will increase tourism development tax revenues, of course, an important part of our tax base. What are the plans for dealing with all this traffic that could be generated by Epic Universe? I presume, given the traffic that the other theme parks generate, that it could be considerable.
Yeah, if you've been in that area, you see the construction happening constantly.
Yeah.
There's construction on Sand Lake, on I-4, and then we're focusing on the focal point of the project, really, which is the Kirkman Extension Project. Orange County and Universal working together to extend Kirkman Road 1.7 miles from Carrier Drive through Sand Lake down to Universal Boulevard. So that's really going to help local traffic. But for theme park traffic, there's an elevated traffic circle where above will be theme park traffic for people going into the park, for buses going into the park, and below will be local traffic. And it's quite
so like a
the
raised
site.
highway, but
Essentially.
traffic circle.
Correct, and it's quite the site. A lot of people within Universal and within Orange County believe this is going to sort of become a regional landmark. That's something that they've been talking about now for months. And just before coming in here today, I was messaging with Public Works in Orange County saying, are we open yet? What's the Kirkman project looking like? We're 2 months out. And they said, we're checking off items. We're getting close, but not there yet.
Of course, that Kirkman extension, that was agreed to, I guess the funding at least for it before the pandemic. That was controversial, right, in Orange County?
It was, and they essentially have been wanting to extend Kirkman for decades, but didn't have the funding to do it. And then they got the partner within Universal to help get that ball rolling. So you'll talk to some people who say it's controversial, other people who say, whoever's going to give the money to make my drive easier, I'm all about it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens when Epic Universe finally gets here, and a lot of people locally will be impatient to see what it holds. Before we go, we wanted to let you know that we'll be at the Orlando Science Center for a taping of Newsnight Conversations this coming Wednesday, April 2nd at 6 p.m. I'll be joined by a panel of local arts and cultural leaders to dive into issues affecting the arts in Central Florida, and you'll be able to join the conversation as well. It's free to attend. Be sure to head on over to our website, wcf.org/newsnight, to register. But that is all the time we have for this week. My thanks to Catherine Silver, WKMG News 6. Thanks so much for coming in, Catherine. James Wilkins from the Orlando Sentinel, Alexa Lorenzo from WFTV Channel 9. Thanks so much for coming in, guys.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Thank
Good conversation today. We'll see you next Friday night at 8:30 here on WCF. From all of us here at Newsnight, take care and have a great week.